What if I told you that every emotion you've ever felt, joy, anger, fear, love, was not random? What if your emotions are tools, not traps? In a world obsessed with avoiding pain and chasing happiness, we've forgotten the true power of emotion. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about understanding what emotions really are, where they come from, and how to use them to dominate your life. Step 1, emotions are messengers, not enemies. Every emotion you feel, whether it's joy, fear, anger, sadness, excitement, or frustration, is not an enemy to fight or a weakness to hide. It's a messenger, a signal, a powerful internal communication from your subconscious trying to get your attention. The problem is most people never stop to listen. They're too busy suppressing, avoiding, numbing, or reacting. But emotions aren't here to sabotage you. They're here to serve you. When you feel anxiety, it's not your body malfunctioning, it's your internal system warning you that something feels uncertain, risky, or unsafe. It's saying, pay attention, prepare, focus. When you feel anger, it's often not about rage. It's about a perceived violation of your rules, a boundary crossed, or a sense of injustice that needs to be acknowledged. And sadness? That's not weakness, that's your system signaling loss, change, or the need for reflection and renewal. The mistake people make is labeling certain emotions as bad or negative. But the truth is, no emotion is negative. Every emotion has a purpose. If you ignore them or push them down, they don't disappear. They fester. And eventually, they explode in ways that are harder to control. Breakdowns, burnout, emotional outbursts, or chronic stress. But when you stop and decode the message, when you ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What is it guiding me toward or away from? When you begin to take back control, you stop being a prisoner to your feelings and start using them as tools. Emotions are your internal compass. They guide your decisions, your relationships, your direction in life. They're your brain or body's way of screaming, whispering, nudging, or pulling you in alignment with your values, your truth, and your needs. Most people have an emotion problem. They have a listening problem. When you shift your relationship with emotion from resistance to curiosity, everything changes. You stop treating fear as something to be feared, anger as something to be ashamed of, sadness as something to rush through. Instead, you begin to see the gold inside every feeling. Because every emotion, no matter how uncomfortable, holds information. And when you listen, when you lean in instead of running away, you unlock insight, power, and transformation that you can't access any other way. Step 2. The origin of emotion is meaning. Emotion doesn't come from the outside world, it comes from the inside. Two people can experience the exact same event and feel completely different emotions. One feels empowered, the other defeated. One feels grateful, the other resentful. Why? Because it's not the event itself that creates the emotion, it's the meaning we assign to that event. That meaning becomes the seed from which emotion is born. Every second of the day, your brain is interpreting your environment, processing your experiences, and asking, what does this mean? That interpretation, conscious or unconscious, determines how you feel. It's not the words someone said to you that made you angry. It's that you interpreted their words as disrespectful or dismissive. It's not the job loss that made you feel broken. It's that you gave it the meaning that you're not good enough or that your future is in danger. On the flip side, someone else might interpret the same job loss as freedom, a chance to reinvent, and they feel excited or relieved. Meaning is everything. It's the lens through which we experience life. It's shaped by our past, our beliefs, our expectations, our conditioning, and our identity. What you believe about yourself, about the world, about what's possible or impossible, that's the framework your brain uses to assign meaning. And once meaning is assigned, emotion follows like a shadow. The intensity of an emotion is also directly tied to the depth of the meaning. If someone cuts you off in traffic and you think, they didn't see me, you might feel a mild annoyance. But if you assign the meaning, they disrespected me, or people always try to take advantage of me, now you're going to feel rage or victimization. The situation didn't change, only the meaning did. And with that shift, your emotional world changed too. This is why two people can experience the same relationship breakup and have completely different emotional responses. One person sees it as rejection and spirals into shame and depression. The other sees it as redirection and feels hope for a better match. The breakup didn't create the emotion, the assigned meaning did. This applies to everything: success, failure, love, betrayal, even your own internal self-talk. If you believe that struggle means you're not enough, you'll feel defeated. But if you believe struggle means you're growing, you'll feel motivated. What makes meaning so powerful and so dangerous is that most of it operates unconsciously. You've been assigning meanings since childhood, and many of those meanings were formed when you didn't have the tools or wisdom to see the full picture. But once they're locked in, they become emotional triggers, shaping how you react, how you feel, and ultimately how you live. Your nervous system isn't reacting to facts, it's reacting to your interpretation of those facts. Your emotions aren't reacting to reality, they're reacting to the story you're telling yourself about what reality means. That story becomes your emotional blueprint. And until you question it, until you become conscious of how you assign meaning, you'll keep feeling the same emotions over and over, even when your external life changes. Step 3, your blueprint shapes your emotional world. Your emotional world doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's built on a blueprint. That blueprint is the invisible framework inside your mind that determines how you interpret life, how you react to challenges, and how you feel moment to moment. It's a complex combination of your beliefs, values, rules, expectations, life experiences, cultural influences, and personal identity. And the powerful truth is, this blueprint shapes every emotion you experience, not just in isolated moments, but as a consistent pattern of your time. Think of your blueprint like the operating system of your inner world. If your system is wired to believe that love must always be earned, then any time you don't receive praise, affection, or attention, you might automatically feel rejected or unworthy, even if that's not the truth. If your blueprint says success means never failing, then a single setback might generate shame, fear, or paralysis. But if your blueprint says failure is feedback, then that same event will produce determination or curiosity. The external trigger didn't change, your blueprint did. Your blueprint contains all the rules you've internalized about how life should be. These rules form unconscious filters. If your rule is, people must respect me at all times, then the moment someone challenges you even slightly, you may feel disrespected or angry. Not because they intended harm, but because they violated one of your internal rules. And the more rigid your rules are, the more emotional pain you feel when the world doesn't follow them. It also governs your values, what you believe is most important in life. If you value freedom above all, but you're stuck in a job that feels restrictive, your blueprint will create feelings of frustration, restlessness, or even depression. If you value security, but you're constantly pushing yourself into risk, you'll feel anxiety. Not because the world is dangerous, but because your life is clashing with your core blueprint. This is why people can live in the same environment and feel entirely different emotions. Their emotional experience is filtered through different internal maps. Even more, your blueprint includes your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are. If you see yourself as a fighter, then when life gets hard, you'll feel challenged but motivated. If your identity is I'm broken, then the same challenges might make you feel helpless or unworthy. This identity lens can either empower your emotions or chain them down. And once a part of your blueprint becomes deeply ingrained, your emotional reactions become predictable, even automatic. The challenge is that most people never consciously choose their blueprint. It's downloaded passively through childhood, parents, culture, media, past trauma, or patterns of repetition. And unless you pause and examine it, you'll keep reacting to life not based on truth, but based on old programming. You'll think life is causing your stress when really it's your blueprint that's being violated. You'll think someone else is making you feel a certain way when in fact, it's the meaning and rule embedded in your blueprint that's generating the emotion. The key isn't to eliminate emotion, the key is to understand the source code behind it. Because when you become aware of the blueprint you're operating from, you can start to change it. You can upgrade it. You can rewrite the rules, shift the values, expand your identity, and install a system that serves the life you actually want, not the one you inherited or were conditioned into. Step 4, pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure are the two core forces that drive every emotion, every decision, every behavior you take, whether you realize it or not. If at the root of human experience is this universal wiring, we are biologically and psychologically conditioned to avoid pain and seek pleasure. It's built into our nervous system, it's embedded in our brain's reward centers, and it shapes how we interpret the world from the moment we are born. Every emotion you feel, whether it's joy, fear, sadness, guilt, excitement, or shame, can be traced back to this fundamental principle. When you feel fear, it's your system signaling a potential for pain. When you feel excitement, it's anticipating pleasure. Pain doesn't just show up physically. It shows up emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The pain of being rejected, the pain of not being enough, the pain of loss, betrayal, failure. And just like that, pleasure isn't just about comfort, it's also tied to meaning, growth, connection, purpose, and inner alignment. But what's crucial to understand is that pain and pleasure are not fixed. They are defined by your personal blueprint. What's painful for one person might be pleasurable for another, based purely on their beliefs, values, and past experiences. For some, public speaking is terrifying, pure pain. For others, it's electrifying, raw pleasure. It's not the event that decides it, it's the interpretation, the meaning, and the wiring behind it. That wiring has been shaped by repetition. Your brain has stored years of experiences where certain actions led to emotional pain and others to emotional pleasure, and now it uses those references to predict how you should feel or act. You touch a hot stove once and get burned, you avoid it next time. But in the emotional realm, it's more complex. You love someone and get hurt, you might unconsciously learn to associate vulnerability with pain. You speak up once and get shut down. You might link expressing your voice to emotional danger. That's how emotional patterns get built, not from logic, but from emotional memory. And here's where things get tricky. Sometimes we link pain to things that are actually good for us. That's the dark side of this system. If you've conditioned your mind to associate pain with hard work, discipline, or honesty, you'll subconsciously avoid those things even though they could transform your life. If you associate pleasure with escape, comfort food, or avoidance, you might keep running toward short-term pleasure that leads to long-term suffering. What you associate pain and pleasure with determines your destiny more than anything else. It decides what you move toward and what you pull away from. It decides which goals you chase and which dreams you let die. because the brain seeks truth. It seeks emotional payoff. Your actions are not guided by what's logical. They're guided by what you believe will minimize pain or maximize pleasure in that moment. Even procrastination is rooted in this. Your brain perceives more pain in starting than in delaying, even when you consciously know the delay creates more problems. What's powerful, though, is that this entire system is programmable. You can retrain your mind to link massive pleasure to growth, responsibility, commitment, challenge, and link massive pain to stagnation, excuses, blame, or avoidance. It takes conscious effort, repetition, and emotional leverage, but it can be done. Because pain and pleasure are not just forces, they're tools. Tools that, when understood and harnessed, can reshape how you feel, how you act, and who you ultimately become. Step 5, you can rewire emotional patterns. Emotional patterns are not fixed traits, they're habits. It's like physical habits, emotional responses are formed. Over time, through repetition, conditioning, and reinforcement, every time you react to a situation with the same emotion, anger, anxiety, guilt, overwhelm, you strengthen that neurological pathway in your brain. It becomes familiar, automatic, and eventually unconscious. But just because a pattern is automatic doesn't mean it's permanent. You can rewire it. You can interrupt, reshape, and replace it with something that serves you rather than sabotages you. Most people live as if their emotions are just poo. They are, I'm just an anxious person. I've always had a temper. I can't help feeling this way. But those identities are built on patterns, not truth. And patterns can be changed. Your brain is neuroplastic, which means it has the ability to create new connections, to rewire circuits, and to build new emotional responses with intention and practice. The same way you learn to tie your shoes or ride a bike, you can train your system to feel empowered. The first step to rewiring an emotional pattern is awareness. You have to catch yourself in the moment. You have to recognize the emotion before it takes over. Most people don't even realize they've gone into an emotional loop until it's already running at full speed. But the moment you observe the pattern, you create distance from it. You go from being inside the emotion to becoming the observer of the emotion. And that's where change begins. But once you're aware of the pattern, the next step is interruption. You can't just think your way out of emotion. You have to shift your state. That means changing your physiology. Move your body, change your breathing, adjust your posture, use your voice. Emotion lives in the body. When you shift the body, you shift the chemistry. You can also interrupt the pattern by changing your focus. What are you focusing on? What are you saying to yourself in your mind? If you always focus on what's missing, what's wrong, or what you can't control, you'll keep triggering the same negative emotions. But if you shift your focus to what you can do, what you've learned, or what you're grateful for, the emotional response changes. And then comes the replacement. You don't just eliminate an old pattern, you replace it with a new one. If you normally respond to stress with anxiety, practice replacing it with a state of calm clarity. That might involve breathing deeply, anchoring a memory where you felt strong, or using a power phrase to shift your mindset. It might mean rehearsing in advance how you want to respond in moments of pressure. Over time, as you reinforce this new pattern through repetition and emotional intensity, it begins to overwrite the old one. Another way to rewire emotional patterns is by changing the meaning behind your experiences. As long as you interpret challenges as threats, you'll feel fear. But if you reframe those same challenges as growth opportunities, your emotional response becomes courage or excitement. When you change the meaning, you change the emotion. And every time you do this, you're rewiring the emotional blueprint your mind runs on. It's important to understand that rewiring isn't about suppressing emotion. It's not about pretending You're happy when you're not. It's about owning your power to choose how you want to respond rather than living as a slave to your default reactions. Every time you choose differently, every time you pause, shift, and respond with intention, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen a new one. Little by little, the emotional pattern you used to feel automatically becomes less intense, less frequent, and eventually it no longer controls you. Rewiring emotional patterns doesn't mean you'll never feel pain, stress, or fear again. It means you develop the tools to navigate those emotions differently. You become the architect of your emotional world. You start building emotional muscle the same way you build physical muscle through conscious repetition, challenge, and practice. Step 6, emotions. Emotions are not just experiences that pass through you. They are raw energy. They are fuel. They are the invisible forces that drive your decisions, shape your behavior, and determine the quality of your life. Every action you take or don't take is influenced by how you feel in that moment. That means emotions are the trigger, the motivator, and the catalyst behind every move you make. And depending on how you respond to them, they can either become rocket fuel that propels you forward or acid that corrodes your momentum and burns everything in its path. When you're in a powerful emotional state, confidence, passion, love, determination, you take bold, decisive action. You move, you create. You lean into challenges, you break through fear and do what others hesitate to even attempt. That surge of emotion gives you access to your highest potential. It sharpens your focus, increases your energy, and aligns your behavior with your highest values. In that state, you're unstoppable, not because you're special, but because you're emotionally aligned and fully activated. But the reverse is also true. When you're in a disempowered emotional state, resentment, fear, self-pity, or hopelessness, that same emotional energy becomes destructive. It leads to paralysis, procrastination, sabotage, withdrawal. You talk yourself out of your dreams. You settle. You lash out or shut down. That emotional force becomes a wrecking ball instead of a launching pad. And the tragedy is most people don't even realize they're handing the wheel of their life over to an emotion they never chose. They just feel something and react without ever questioning whether that emotion deserves to drive the car. Emotions are like fire. Left unchecked, they can burn your relationships, your health, your goals, your sense of self. But if you learn how to channel that fire, to use it intentionally, it can light your path, heat your vision, and power everything you do. Anger, for example, can be toxic and explosive when expressed blindly, but when channeled with clarity and purpose, it can become the drive to correct injustice, set boundaries, or rise above complacency. Fear can paralyze you, but it can also sharpen your instincts, make you prepare more thoroughly, and push you to grow when you'd otherwise stay small. You are not at the mercy of your emotions unless you choose to be. You can feel deeply and still act with intention. You can experience the storm and not get swept away by it. The key is to develop emotional mastery, the ability to recognize what you're feeling, understand where it's coming from, and then direct that energy in a way that serves your highest good. That doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing your emotions. It means listening to them, extracting their message, and then using them as fuel to move forward, not as a weapon against yourself or others. Every single day you're making choices, consciously or unconsciously, about how to use your emotional energy. You're either feeding patterns that empower your life or feeding patterns that diminish it. You're either rising with your emotions or crumbling under them. And the difference isn't the emotion itself, it's the meaning you assign to it and the direction you take because of it. You can use sadness to isolate and self-destruct, or you can use it as a signal to heal, to reach out, to reconnect with your values. You can use fear to hide, or you can use it as a compass that points toward the exact place you need to grow. Even joy and excitement, if not grounded, can lead to distraction or overindulgence, but when harnessed, they can become creative flow and vibrant leadership. It's never about eliminating emotion. It's about training yourself to use it rather than letting it use you. The emotional energy inside you is powerful, it's primal. It's immediate and it's always moving. Whether it becomes action or destruction is not a matter of fate. It's a matter of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and personal ownership. So here's the truth. Emotions are not here to control you. They're here to serve you. They're the most honest, raw, and powerful signals you have in this life. They hold the key to your pain and your potential. But the question is, will you keep reacting to them on autopilot, or will you step into the driver's seat and use them with purpose? Because once you understand that emotions are created by the meaning you give to life, once you realize that your blueprint can be rewired, once you see that pain and pleasure are tools, not shackles, everything changes. You don't need to fear your emotion. You need to master them. You need to stand in the middle of your storms and say, this is fuel, this is power, this is me taking ownership. So from this moment forward, make a decision. Decide that your emotions will be your greatest allies, not your hidden enemies. Use them to build, to connect, to grow, to lead. Use them to live fully. Because you weren't born to be numb or reactive or small. You were born to feel deeply, live intentionally, and turn every emotional wave into the force that drives your destiny.